take out your notes, man, or your phones. I hope you have somewhere where you can jot down some notes, because some things that will be said here, you're going to have a lot of homework, okay? There's stuff that I'm going to ask you to go and check out for yourself. Do a little bit of research. Come back, next week. And if you have more questions, go ahead and do that. Again, you've been given pieces of paper. You can write down your notes. Or you can tear down a little bit of a paper there. If you have a specific question later on, we can see whether we can jump into it. But in Mark 12, this guy comes to Jesus and asks him, of all the commandments, which ones are the greatest, all right? And Jesus summarizes them into two. He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul, with all your mind and with all your strength. Okay, that's the first part of that verse. And the second one, he said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Basically, he's giving you I don't know what you call it's a Mokenya, okay? What's a Mokenya in Gen Z terms? Okay, a Mokenya is basically, this is your cheat sheet. It's your cheat note if you want to pass. If of all the laws that are given, if you do these two things, you're set. Love God with everything that you have, okay, your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength, and love people like you love yourself. Now, we know how to do some of that stuff, but one of the things that I think as Christians we sometimes do not really, remember to do is to love the Lord our God with all our mind. And this month, we are going to exercise our minds in loving him. Your mind is about your intellect. It's about loving him with your intellect and reason, okay? This is where intellectual stuff goes through. And this is where reason happens, okay? So how are we to love him with our intellect and with our reason? Because we are commanded to do that if you're a Christian, okay? And basically now, some of you are Christians. Oh, now, all of you attend church, okay? But some of you are Christians, some of you are not yet Christians, I pray. By that I mean that you haven't yet perhaps committed yourself fully to what it means to be a Christian. But some of you are. Now, for those that are, you probably, believe that God exists, okay? You probably believe that God chose to reveal himself on this earth about some 2,000 years ago and died on a cross. 2033 we'll be celebrating 2,000 years since Jesus dies on the cross. So it's been a couple of years since he dies on the cross. And you believe that was God's revealed, it was God's revelation to us, okay? He comes and his death, his life and death and resurrection is amazing and does a couple of things. We'll jump into that a little bit later on. But you believe that, okay? But if somebody in your space comes to you and asks you why you believe that there is a God, I wonder what reason you would give them, okay? So you say that you're a Christian, yes. You say, yeah, I'm a Christian. Why do you believe that God exists? Why do you believe that there is a God? Okay, let's not even come to that God is Jesus. Why do you believe that a God exists? Peter writes a letter to the church in 1 Peter 3, verse 15 and 16. Go check it out, write it down. And he tells the Christians this, if you're a Christian, this is what he tells you. He says, set apart Jesus Christ as Lord. In other words, that's you if you're a Christian. If you're not, he's telling you, set apart Jesus Christ as Lord. This is his advice to you. Okay, and then he tells you do something else. And always be ready, he says, to give an answer for the hope that you have in him. Always be ready to answer why you believe that he is God. Okay? First of all, that assumes that he's assuming that people are going to ask you why you believe. Now, and for people to ask you why you believe, he's assuming that people will know that you believe. Now, some of you are Christians, but nobody knows that you believe in God. Okay? Your Christianity is a little bit quite private. They think you're just a nice person, and they do not know that the reasons why you act the way you do, the reasons why you do not do some stuff is because you believe in God. So make sure that they know that you believe in God. Once they know, some people at some point in your life, they're going to ask you why you believe that stuff. Why do you believe that God exists? Why do you believe that God exists? Because this person is like, I don't know that I think, that stuff is kind of a little bit like mambo jumbo out there, nini, who believes that anymore? Who believes that anymore in this day and age? Okay, science is where the stuff is at. Science is what proves everything, and scientists don't believe that God exists, they'll tell you. Which, by the way, I'll tell you this morning is not true. It's not true. No cap. 65% of Nobel Peace Prize winners, okay? Somebody did, research between the Nobel Peace Prize winners between 1901 to 2000, okay? So nobody has done this century because we're still in the, we're just 24 years into this century, but just the math, just the numbers of, the Nobel Peace Prize winners, in 1900s, okay, for those 100 years, 65% of them believe that God exists. These are people who are winning Nobel prizes in science, okay, in mathematics, in chemistry, in physics. So let nobody tell you that scientists do not believe that God exists. Some scientists don't, but many, many scientists do believe. Isaac Newton, the guy who discovers the, gravity and, the understanding that we have today about gravity, Isaac Newton believed in God. Many of the people that you're studying as, our fathers of science believed that a God exists. So why do you believe what you believe? Turn to somebody, tell them why. You tell them the reason why you think God exists. What's your reason? Okay? It's 30 seconds. Why? Well, what's your proof that God exists? What's your argument? If I come to you and I tell you God does not exist, I do not see him with my face, therefore God does not exist, you are believing in stupidity. What would you say? You're stupid, he says, to believe in this stuff. What do you say? What's your reason? Fake it if you're, just turn to somebody so that I feel like you're doing what I'm saying. Just turn to somebody and say hi and stuff if you don't want to talk about that stuff. Because some of you are not speaking. Why do you believe what you believe? That God exists. Karibu Marianne. It's good to see you. All right, listen. Listen up. There's a couple of arguments, and when I say argument, I don't mean like argue like we are fighting. Okay, it's not like a fight, but in the philosophical world, in the science world, we talk about arguments or these are some of the explanations that exist to tell us that there is something more beyond the physical world, and that there is a God that exists, okay? The evidence or the proof, when we use our intellect and our reason, okay? Now, we're not going to jump into a lot of this stuff, but go check out something that's called the Pascal wager. This is one of them. Okay? It's an argument for basically that there is more to life. That's one. By the way, I'm going to need like a tissue or a handkerchief or something to wrap this as I go ahead. Iko pale? There's okay, all good. Okay, the other one is, you look at something called the ontological argument. Do you want the spelling? Okay. This basically, you might want to check it out. This is called the ontological argument. I'm just going to narrow down on what I think are more convincing arguments about God's existence. And there's one called the teleological argument, or the argument from design. I'm going to put it down here. It's not a science. You came to church, but it's a bit of science, kidogo. This is by design. Teleological. This comes from the Greek word telos, which means purpose or goal, all right? Teleological argument. It's called Anselm teleological argument. You guys will find it. Google this stuff. But I want, and then there's a moral argument. The moral argument basically says that, hey, we find ourselves in a world where there are what we call objective moral laws. Like there are laws about morality, which is a word that means right and wrong, how we decide what's right and wrong. And those who argue this way say, look, it seems that there are some moral arguments that regardless of where you grew up, what you were taught in your places of worship, whether you grew up in not believing in God, whatever, but there are just these laws that seem to exist, that all of us agree that right and wrong is right and wrong. And we and because we find proof that there are some objective moral laws, it means they're not subjective. They're not like, it depends on you. It depends on how you feel like. For example, that murder is wrong. Okay, it doesn't depend on how you feel or where you're brought up or whatever. Murder is wrong. I'm not talking about killing, but I'm saying murder, because sometimes it is possible that somebody is killed, but it is not murder. For example, in self-defense, if you come to my house and you try and threaten my kids with weapons, and I am like, it's either they die or you die, I'm going to do something about it. Now, that's not going to be murder, okay? But there's this, that if you for some reason you dislike somebody or somebody whatever's, and you murder them, we all agree, regardless of who we are, that is wrong. So they're objective. It is out there. And that argument basically says that because there are objective moral laws, every law has a lawgiver. Every law, if you find a law somewhere, somebody came up with a law, and therefore that argument sort of says, because there are objective moral laws, then there is a moral lawgiver, okay, that transcends you and I and our feelings and our, subjective understanding, okay? So that's the moral law argument. I think it has, it's valid. But let me narrow I'm going to combine what is called cosmological argument, all right? Let me combine cosmological, moral argument. No, not moral. Cosmological argument basically says this. The cosmological argument says that everything that has a cause has a causer, somebody that has caused it to happen, okay? If you combine, that's a cosmological moral argument. That's as simple as I can put it, okay? It's just that, everything that has been caused has an initial causer, all right? And if you combine that with the teleological argument, specifically the design argument, okay? You combine these two, I think you land on something that's pretty powerful. The design argument basically says this, guys, that, okay, let me go with the cosmological one. By the way, all scientists, anyone who has any sort of brain up here, all scientists are in agreement today that the universe that our Earth exists in, we're in a galaxy called the Milky Way. But the Milky Way is one galaxy in the universe, okay? And there's billions and billions of planets. In fact, there's billions of galaxies, and there's billions and billions and trillions of planets. So how vast the universe is just crazy. But all scientists, based on observation, are now in agreement that the universe had a beginning. Okay, that the universe was caused. That one there's no argument about. Okay, whether you study what is called the radiation of the universe, you study the expansion of the universe has been expanding over time, and therefore when they do the math, when they do the investigations, and you study the cosmology, you realize that there was an initial point beginning of everything. That everything started from an initial point. This is not just a biblical religious claim. This is scientific, all right? That everything started. And I'm talking about time, space, and matter. Science is scientists are in agreement that time had a beginning. I don't know whether your mind can wrap your head can wrap itself around that idea. Time had a beginning, science says. Time had a beginning. Okay? There was a beginning of time. There was a beginning of space. There was a beginning of matter. In other words, there was a time where there was no time. Ooh, does that even make sense? There was a time that time didn't exist. There was a time that the space did not exist, and there was a time that there was no matter. There was nothing. There was no molecules. There was no atoms. And then at some point, these things all come into being, okay? All come into being at the same time. Okay? And basically, when we're talking about God in this case, and for our context today, it means we're talking about a mind or an intelligence that is timeless, is spaceless, and is immaterial. Because the thing that brings all these things into being cannot be formed of this thing. Am I making sense? Because these things were not there in the first place. So the intelligence that brings into being time, space, and matter, it has to be timeless. Because time, it is living outside, it's in this outside of time. It has to be spaceless, and it has to be immaterial. But when we combine that with how well the world is designed, okay, so we know that the world is caused, so there has to be a causer that is timeless, spaceless, and immaterial. We combine it with, when we observe the design of the universe, we land on this understanding that that which brings the universe into being has to be intelligent. It has to be, first of all very powerful, because this is a lot of power, okay? Very powerful. And then that being has to be intelligent, because behind every design you find intelligence. I don't know, it doesn't matter what you look at. Anything that is designed has an intelligent mind behind it. Well, you say, what about artificial intelligence? Okay? Yes, the word there is intelligence. So and the artificial intelligence did not intelligent itself. You know, a mind that is not artificial put together artificial intelligence that we have today. Wouldn't you agree? Yes. So everything that starts to begin, everything that is caused has a causer. And then when we look at the design of the universe that we live in, we cannot exhaust that topic. My friends, it's called the fine-tuning argument. This design, we can put a slash and say, look at something called a fine-tuning argument. The fine-tuning argument is a design argument that says, guys, in the universe that we live in, it is so finely tuned for the existence of life, for us to be able to have life in our universe, not just on earth, but for the universe to have life and to support life. It is very, very uniquely, intricately fine-tuned. Think about this. Think of yourself going into think of a room that has knobs, okay? Little knobs and dials, okay? And you're supposed to turn these little knobs to certain degrees. This one has to turn to that point. You go like a safe. Like in the movies how you open a safe. You have to fine-tune, so that you get it properly. But walk into a room that has thousands of knobs like that, and you have to fine-tune each knob, not to be the same. All of them are different. All of them have different values. And you have to fine-tune all of those knobs to get the right combination to support life on your planet, and for the universe to be the way it is. It is extremely fine-tuned. For example, okay, the gravity. Okay, let me say the expansion. I talked about the expansion of the universe. If the expansion of the universe slows down even kidogo, even just ever so slightly, the universe collapses in its own gravity. It cannot go any faster or any small. If it goes any faster than it's expanding today, we all fly off. We all fly off into oblivion. We float out of existence. Okay? The expansion of the earth is so finely tuned, the expansion of the universe, finely tuned that it has to stay the way it is for us to be alive today. It changes a little bit and everything is gone. Everything. Human beings, animals, planets, even everything, stars, everything goes off. Okay? The gravity of the earth, the gravity of the universe, so finely tuned. Okay? 1 degree towards the sun, we burn. We all Jamaica, we all go. We go up in flames. 1 degree off, away, and we all freeze. Okay? The earth is held, yani, it is like a tightrope and it cannot move away from its orbit around the sun. It moves a little bit and we are all gone. Okay, now, that's just one dial in that hole, in that room that you stepped into. I've just talked about two dials. One of them, the expansion of the universe. The other one, the distance that we have from the sun. Those are just two dials in a hole that you have all these dials that must align. And if one of them gets off, one of those dials goes off, everything goes. So the earth is, scientists are, they keep studying the universe, they keep studying life, and they realize, man, the design is impeccable. Now, there are two options here. Maybe three, but let me focus on two options. Either, when we look at that, and there are two conclusions we can make. That either all that is held by chance, or that there is a mind behind the design that sustains it the way it is. Okay, now, there is a chance that all that is chance. Okay, there is a chance that it's possible that all those things just so happen to align by themselves and there's no mind behind it. Now, it's a small chance because the way I live my life and the way I see the world, everywhere I see design, I see a mind behind it. But you can come and tell me that there is a chance that there is no design behind it. There's no designer. That all that intricate design is by chance. Now, if I walk to the field over there and I find a big rock, and I hold the rock and I go like, I wonder where this came from. It could have been here. It just happens to be here. It's just a rock, and I leave it there because it's just a rock. But if I go to that field and I find a watch, and I just randomly find a watch, what are the chances that I conclude that this watch put itself together? This watch put itself together? When I find a watch in the field, I go like, I wonder whose watch this is, and I wonder who created this watch, and I wonder what company, what brand is this watch? Okay, there's a mind. When you find complexity, especially when you find complexity, you go like, there has to be a mind behind it. Now, if I find a big rock, I'm like, it's not complex, it's just a rock. What are the chances? But when I find complexity, I don't know about you, for me, it's telling me somebody has put some things together. Now, but like I'm saying, there's a chance that it is all chance. Scientists at Oxford University have worked out the odds that the universe just so happened to align itself with everything, put it itself together. Okay? There's a scientist called Roger Penrose from Oxford University. They worked very, very hard to get to these numbers. The odds that it is by chance. You guys know, this is a little bit of math. If you flip a coin, what are the odds that you will get a heads or tails? If you flip a coin, okay, what are the odds that you'll get heads or tails? It's 50-50, isn't it? The odds that you're going to get a tail or a head is 50-50. If you flip a coin once. If I flip a coin 10 times, what are the odds that I'm getting heads in the times that I flip it? It's 99.9%. Like, if you flip a coin 10 times, what are the odds that at least once you will get tails? It's almost guaranteed. Because the more you flip it, the more it... If it's being too much, say, well, watcha. Let me give you math. I'm just giving you math. Here's a chance that the world put itself together, the universe, and that there's no mind and intelligence behind it, according to the Oxford professors, all right? Are you ready? The odds that this thing happened by chance is 1. You know this number? Do you know 10? Okay? It's 1 to 10 to the power of 10. What does that mean? Do you know this number? This number is 1 and 10 zeros behind it. Okay? Yes? Mathematics? 10 to power 2 is what? Is 1 and 2 zeros, right? So 10 to power 10 is 1 and 10 is 1 and 10 zeros behind it. We're not done. This 10, not this one. This one has 123 zeros behind it. Okay? So basically that number, the chance is a 1, all right? And the chances of that is you put a 1 and 10. We don't have, that is not a number you can think of, okay? That's all I'm saying. They've worked out, and that's a number. They're saying that the chance that happened by chance is a number that cannot fit on this board. The zeros cannot go on this board. It's not 1 and 123 zeros. It's 1 and 10 to the power of 123 zeros behind it. That's a chance. So you land with that one. After you've observed the universe and you want to say that it is by chance, that's your number. But the Bible says, in the beginning, God. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Why is this important? Is that my time? Okay, we don't have time. Look. So let's say you say, okay, Pastor Andy, sawa, God exists. How do we know that this God is Jesus? How do we know that Jesus then is that God? Because Jesus says in John chapter 1 that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And he's talking about John is talking about Jesus, that he was at the beginning, and he's the one who brings time in the beginning, space and matter to happen. So the question is, how do I know that is Jesus? How do I know that Jesus is God revealed to us here? What do you think? Because Jesus comes and he has the ability to forgive sin. Jesus comes and he claimed to occupy and co-occupy God's throne. He says, I and my Father are one. And Jesus accepted praise. And Jesus says that he was pre-existent. Before Abraham was, I am, I was, basically, etc., etc. But then, how do we know that what all these things Jesus is claiming to be is true? Let me tell you what I think for me seems very convincing. If somebody comes and is your friend, if your friend does these things, claims to be forgiving sin. If you have a friend that claims to be forgiving sin, and he claims to be the Son of God, and that he claims that yes, he was born in 2020, in 2000. When were you guys born? He was born in 2012. Okay, he was born in 2010. Let's say he was born in 2010, but he claims that he was there existing before you guys were born. But you grew up with this guy, and so and he's performing some miracles. But then you're like, miracles can happen. Even, Egyptians could perform a few things. Even their rods could turn into snake, just as Moses says and stuff. By the way, if God exists, is it possible that miracles exist? If there is a God, if we agree that there is a God, do you think miracles are possible? I think so. Do you know why? Because if some of you are doing robotics and programming and stuff, if I have a robot and I program this robot if I press a button, the robot goes 2 steps forward, 1 step to the side and sits down. Okay, that's how I've programmed it. If I press a button, the robot goes 2 steps forward, 1 step to the side and sits down. Okay, I programmed it that way. Is it possible though that I can come in and input a different program so that when the button is pressed, the robot goes back and goes to this side and jumps up? Is it possible? For me, what a miracle is just God stepping into what he has already created to be the order and the nature of things. And God steps in and inputs a different program. And for us, we see it as a miracle because there's a way this robot has been functioning, but now it's doing a little bit different. So a miracle theoretically is possible if there is a God. Sawa. So, but why do I think Jesus is God? Why do I think Jesus is God? So again, to your friend who you grew up with, and let's say he's performed a few miracles, and let's say he said he claims to be forgiving sin and stuff like that, but you're still there, you're like, I don't know whether he's a prophet, I don't know whether he's, there's people who've done a couple of the things he's done before, miracles have been seen before, but I don't know. And then one day your friend says this. He says, guys, here's a plan. I'm going to die. Here's the plan. I'm going to die, and here's the thing, I'm going to be killed. Let's plan this out. I'm going to be killed. And you say, and maybe you're not believing him, son, and say, no. This thing let's organize that professional people kill you. Professionals. People who their job is to kill. And we say, yes, that's a good plan. Let's organize that. Let's have people who are killing your friend be professional killers, because we want to make sure he dies. And people who crucify people, the crucifixion guys, they are professional killers. They do this for a living. And then you say, but where are we going to do this? And you say, no, it's going to be out where everyone can see you. In fact, we're going to put you up on a hill. Even the guy who's just, we raise you up and we kill you in public. So that we don't want any fancy things that, we want to see. Everybody should see that you're going to die. If we do that, and your friend is killed by professionals and is killed in public where everybody sees them. And then your friend says, this is your planning this thing, okay? And he says, look, here's a plan. You go plan it out, get professionals to do it, and we're going to be in a public place. And then here's the thing, in 3 days, I'm going to raise myself up. Jesus tells the Jews who want to kill him, he tells them, destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up again. Okay? Not that you will come and pray for me and I rise. No. I'm dead, and I'm going to raise myself up. Can I tell you something? If you have a friend, it doesn't matter what his name is. If you have a friend who can pull that off, you need to worship him. Or you need to worship her. Because that person is beyond the realms of our physical world. The power of life and death is in their hands. The power of life and death is in their hands. And by definition, that person is God. If we can kill you properly, in public, and we put you to start rotting to the point that in day 3 people are coming to put perfume on your body because by day 3 you're supposed to be starting to smell. And instead you walk out of that place, you have my worship. You are God. And that proves that the stuff you've been claiming of yourself is true. If you do that, then you can forgive sins. The disciples were following Jesus, but they were like, The reason why when the rooster, what does a rooster do? Crowed. When the rooster need, that rooster. When the rooster did its thing, do you know why Peter denied Jesus 3 times? Because he was afraid of death. And they had just killed the guy that was his leader. And he doesn't want to go down that path. But when Jesus shows up before and presents himself to Peter, it hits the disciples that, my guy, he is who he has claimed to be. In fact, not even death can hold him down. The boldness that they get to go and tell people about the good news and the gospel of salvation was because he rises. Paul says in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, he writes this is in 1 Corinthians, where is it? 15, 16 and 17. Paul says that if Jesus Christ did not rise from the dead, our faith is useless. It's nothing. It's without no meaning. Because resurrection, among other things, authenticates Jesus as God. So when you ask me why I believe that there is a God, I'll take you through the fact that everything that is caused has a causer. And I'll kind of explain to you how, the fine-tuning argument. And for me, the evidence is that the world has a beginning. And that the evidence is finely designed, intricately designed. And behind every design, I see there has to be a mind behind it, an intelligence behind it. And for me, that is God. And when you ask me why I think Jesus is God, for me, it's the resurrection. If that guy can do what he did, then he is who he says he is, and he deserves our worship. I'll tell you why that's important to me. 15 years ago, my wife died. And 15 years ago, my wife had an accident not too far from here. at the junction. She was hit by a truck while crossing the road, and death, and I was in the hospital for about 2 hours before she died. And if you've ever in a room where life is lost, somebody checks out of the room and yet the doors are open, you realize that life is beyond the physical for sure. But there is something about death that for us is so final. Like is so final. If you ever sit in the front row of a funeral, you know what I'm talking about. And some of you know. You've sat in the front row of a funeral service where you know that you have lost someone of value, and by yourself there is nothing you can do about it. Not now, not forever. But because Jesus rises from the dead and promises that to those who trust him, he will rise them up. He will raise them up when he comes back. I put my trust in him because of that. All right? Questions? We're done. Jim, how do you want to do this? Okay. Anybody has a question? We have a mic if you want to ask the question. And man, guys, this is an open conversation. Feel free to go like, yeah, that makes sense, but it doesn't make sense, etc., etc. You know, we have no. Me when I had no cap, I thought no cap means like you don't put a cap on anything, like no limits. But I'm learning, man. I'm learning the lingo. No cap, kumbe inamaanisha nini? No lies and stuff. So, any papers with questions? We can